Welcome to Accounter. In this section, we'll demonstrate how to log in, set up your business, and access the system. To begin, you'll need to log in using your credentials. The username is always an email address. Simply enter your username and password to access the system. Once logged in, you'll see a list of all businesses you have access to. In our example, John has been granted access to Tech Vista Solutions. Click on the business name to enter. Notice that John's role is set as Financial Manager, which gives him full access to all menu options configured for this business. Different users can have different access levels, which we'll explore in detail later. Now let's configure the essential business details. This is the first step in setting up your company in Accounter. Navigate to Settings. Then select Business Details. Here, you'll enter all the fundamental information about your business. Start by entering your business name, in our case, Tech Vista Solutions. Add your complete business address, including any additional location information you need. Next, enter your VAT number. This is crucial for tax compliance. Finally, add your bank account details. These will be used on documents like invoices and statements. Once you've entered all this information, click Update. Your business is now properly configured and ready to process transactions. And the next section we want to look at is just to understand how access for different users in the system will work. So we go to Settings and then User Permissions. Under User Permissions, you can now see that John has full access. There are also two other users set up for this specific business. David, whose role is to do supplier transactions, and Mary, whose role is to do customer transactions. If I now log out and log in with David's username, you'll see David can again select the business. But his permission setup is such that he can only create new suppliers or see reports relevant to suppliers. I'll then log out and log back in with John, who has full permissions. So we can go back to Settings, User Permissions, and change David's permissions so he also has access to debit notes, purchase invoices, and perhaps also purchase quotes. If we then log out again and log back in with David, you'll see that David can now not only create new suppliers, but David can also do purchase invoices and create debit notes. Our other user is Mary, so let's just log back in with John and see what Mary's permissions look like. Currently, Mary is set up for custom access without any specific permission granted to her. And if we then log in with her user, we'll see that she has no access at this stage to anything in the system. She'll be able to see the business, but as soon as she selects the business, she'll see a message pop up saying, "The administrator has not set up your permissions for this business." John must now do the following steps to set up access for Mary so she can do the work required of her. So let's go do the final step to ensure Mary's permissions are set up correctly. And because Mary deals with customers, she will need to access customers. She will also perhaps be able to do receipts. If she wants to process payments from customers, she must do sales invoices. We'll also give her sales quotes. And then under Reports, we need to see if there's anything else here. Under Reports, we'll enable Aged Receivables, Customer Statements, Customer Summary, and also Sales Invoices Totals and Sales Invoices by Item. she will also be able to see a list of the sales invoices and sales quotes in the system. So her setup is now complete, and when she logs in, she will only see the menu options activated for her. So she'll be able to see customers, sales quotes, sales invoices, credit notes, and then under the Reports menu, she'll have a limited list of reports to view. So let's quickly log back in as Mary, so you can just see that her menu now looks like this. Under Reports, she'll only be able to see the following customer reports, and she'll only be able to see those sales invoice reports. Furthermore, she has no access to any other functionality. Creating customer records is fundamental to any accounting system. Let's start with manual customer creation. So, the next step we want to do is to look at how we go about creating a new customer, and we'll just copy this customer's data in manually. First, we will enter the name. Then we need an address for this customer. So we'll make his billing address and his delivery address the same address. We need an email address for the customer. And then you'll see under custom fields, we also ask for a VAT number, a contact name, and contact numbers. So we'll just quickly fill these in. Then we can also just set the customer's credit limit. And in this case, we'll just make it 100,000. Lastly, just click Create to save the customer record. And now your customer is ready for transactions. Okay, so the next step we want to do is to now create customers from a CSV file where we have a few customer records using a batch create, which is a much faster process to get new customers in instead of manually. Before I do that, I just want to quickly set up a code for this customer here, and I'm going to say this is customer number 100. If we then click on the customer menu again, we'll see we have one customer that we created manually. And to do the batch create from a CSV file, we'll first determine what structure our data needs to be in so we can batch create it. And to do that, we'll use the batch update function. Now, we use batch update because we've already manually created one customer. Select batch update. Select the customer we created, customer 100. Click the batch update button. Now we choose copy to clipboard. And from here, we want to work in Excel or Google Sheets. And we'll then see, here are our customers whose data we want to use with a batch create. So with the batch update, I copied the current customer that we created manually. Now I'm going to paste it here. And you can now see there are many fields maintained in the database to create a new customer. But we're only interested in the relevant fields. So the code, you'll remember I added at the end, credit limit. Currency is not important to me, so we'll delete cells, delete left. We have an email address, we don't need a division, we don't need control account. Now you'll see again on the manual form we used, there were custom fields. The first custom field was our VAT number. The second custom field was the contact name. Then there were two custom fields that don't come through nicely in Google Sheets. But let's see if we can just edit them. We don't need formulas, so we can just edit this. Then we also don't need further information for this customer. So all the default values we can just remove. So now I have the information that I manually entered into the system using the form. I've also pasted it here. And I now want to use these headings in row 12 to fetch my data again, which I'll copy back into the system with a batch create. So let's take the name, and we know this field must be the name. Then in my data, my example data, I didn't have a code, so I want to say insert column here. Then I'll add a code here. Okay, then this one will be 101. That one will be 102. And then in this way, we should now get 103, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then we have contact person, so we know this is the contact person. We need this heading for a contact person. We have an email address. Its heading is already correct. Then we have phone number. This is mobile. So under mobile, we need this. And that's a landline number. So for phone, we'll use that one. And then, let's see what else we have here. So we have address, postal code, country code, VAT number. So our VAT number's heading in the system must be this. And we have a credit limit. Credit limit looks exactly the same to me. So, we have name, code, credit limit, the address we must now use, both addresses, email, but I think all our custom fields are in. And for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to put billing address there, and I'm going to put delivery address as address 2. What I want to mention at this stage is, we'll do another explanation where we show how to get the different parts of the address into one field, but that's just an Excel formula that can be applied. For the purposes of this example, we'll just use 2 columns, but take note that the different components of the address, which are in different columns in the example data, must all be put into one column for the purposes of the batch create. So let's just use this as example data just to demonstrate how the function will work. And now, we should be right. So let's just check. We have a name, we have a code, we have the contact name, we have an email address, then we have landline, mobile, addresses, and we have the VAT number, and we have the credit limit. That's the information we want to create in our example in the system. Now, you'll also see province, postal code, country, payment terms, and customer since are not currently used in the example. But it is, of course, also possible to, for example, add another custom field in the system so that we can bring in the date from when this customer got an account in our business. But up to here, we've now set all our column headings that the system needs to import. And I can now select all the data. I don't need to change its order, and I don't need to exclude columns that have data in them that we're not going to use. I just select the entire data set. Copy it. And then I can now go back to the system. But remember now, we started with a batch update. So we could use the information from the record we created manually and get the headings for the batch create. So I'm not going to paste here now. I'm going back to customers, and then I'm going to batch operations again, and now go to batch create. And don't click on copy to clipboard again, but just immediately paste here the data I'm now getting from Google Sheets. And I say, next. We can just scroll down because it gives us a preview to see which new customers we're now going to use or create. So we now have customer 101 to 107 with the necessary information. And the last step is to click Batch Create. So now I can go back to customers. And then you'll see there's our 8 customers in our list. Now, while we're busy with customers, I just want to quickly point out a few other things here. So, in any list of records in the system, we can add columns that are of interest to us. So you'll see here, we now just have name, then the accounts receivable balance, and a status. But there's other information that's usually relevant. So, let's add our VAT number, maybe our contact name. And maybe we'll want to see the mobile number. I'm going to move the VAT number to the end. And then what I also like to always add is the sales invoices. So let's just quickly check for me again there. Accounts receivable is there, so I'll have accounts receivable last, and I'll put my sales invoices second to last. Then update it, and it looks something like this. So, customer's name, his status, the contact name, mobile telephone number, the VAT number. Sales invoices shows nothing yet, but just like accounts receivable has a link of the total outstanding, sales invoices will also have a link when sales invoices are created under the customer. So it's handy to add a bit more information that the user can then see when they look at the customer list. We're now moving on to managing our suppliers. The process is similar to what we've done before, and we'll begin by manually creating our first supplier profile. Navigate to the Suppliers section. Click on New Supplier. First, we'll input the supplier's name. It's also best practice to assign a unique code for internal tracking. Let's start our supplier codes with the 9000 series. We'll leave the credit limit blank for now, but you can set one if needed. Next, let's capture the address and contact details. I'll enter the physical address, the primary email for correspondence, and a landline number. We don't have a mobile number for this supplier, so we can skip that field. If you have any specific notes for this supplier, you can add them here. For now, we have all the essential information. Next, click Create. Now, I've noticed that a crucial piece of information is missing from our standard layout: the supplier's VAT number. For tax compliance, this is a mandatory field, so let's add it. Navigate to Settings. Click Obsolete Features. Select Classic Custom Fields. Then click New Custom Field. We'll label this field Supplier VAT Number. We need to ensure it appears on the Supplier's form. The field type will be a single-line text. You also have the option to show this information on printed documents, which can be very useful. Once configured, we'll create the field. Now, we can simply enter the VAT number into the new field and save the changes. All future suppliers will now have this field available, ensuring we capture all necessary information from the start. Now that we've set up our supplier template, we can efficiently import multiple suppliers at once using the batch creation tool. The process is identical to how we handled customers. First, we need to get the correct data structure, including the custom VAT field we just added. Navigate to Suppliers, click Batch Update. Select the supplier we created manually. Click the Batch Update function button, then click Copy to Clipboard. I'll paste this into a spreadsheet. This gives us the exact headers our system requires. As you can see, our custom field for the VAT number is now included, which is perfect. I'll clear the data for our first supplier. For the supplier code, I'll use the account number from our source file. I will simply rename the account number column to code to match the system header. With our data prepared and formatted correctly, I'll select and copy all the new supplier information from the spreadsheet. Now, we'll return to the software to perform the batch creation. Copy the prepared supplier data from the spreadsheet. Navigate back to Suppliers. And then I'm going to Batch Operations again. And now go to Batch Create. I'll paste the copied data into the field and click Next. The system gives us a preview to verify that everything is mapped correctly. I can see the name, code, contact name, telephone, and the VAT number are all in the right place. This looks good, so let's finalize the import yet. And just like that, if we return to our suppliers list, we now have a full list of 12 suppliers imported with all their information. To make this view more useful, we can customize the columns. I prefer to see the supplier's status right after their name, followed by their VAT number, contact name, and telephone number. Let's apply that change. There, our supplier list is now organized exactly how we need it, giving us a clear and informative overview. So let's go to Bank and Cash Accounts. You'll see there are already standard accounts in the system, one for petty cash, one for the current account, and one for the call account. So I want to maybe just add a little bit of information to my current account. So I take its account number and edit it. And let's say this is the FNB current account, and its account number is this. We can make it active, and then I am also going to have a savings account. Okay, but this is a standard bank savings account. So let's take our standard account, which is a call account, and say this is our standard bank savings account, and its account number is this. We can update it. And our petty cash remains petty cash. So our bank accounts are correct. And that's all that we need to do so that we can do bank transactions. I think what we want to do from here is perhaps use an example for the FNB account. So let's import bank transactions, and we say FNB account. And we choose bank statements for May 2025. We say Next. The system shows us we're going to import 19 transactions into the FNB current account. The balance is 0 to start with, and when it's done, it will be 145,427. So we import it. Now you can see the balance is updated to 145,427. But we also have transactions that need to be allocated, uncategorized receipts, and uncategorized payments. For the next step, before we do the allocations, we'll first create a few customer and supplier transactions for those purposes. So we'll come back to banking. So what we want to do now is start with sales, and for that, we'll look at sales invoices first. And again, the same. We'll say New Sales Invoice. You'll see it changes to today's date, but we can now go back historically and say this invoice is for the 10th of May, and it's for Cloud Tech Solutions. So I just type Cloud, you'll remember. When we batch created the customers, we gave each one a code, so it shows the code, because it's not necessary to remember the code. Whether I remember Cloud or Industries or the code, I just type it in, and then it brings back that customer for me. It will insert the address. Here I can add a description if I want. So in this case, I'm going to say this description is consulting services and travel expenses. Now, in the simple way we're going to create an invoice now, we'll just take it directly to the general ledger sales account. So here, I'll search for sales. And I'll first add a description. So in this case, I add a description column and I say it is consulting services. 40 units. And it's at $13.50 per hour with VAT on it. I'll add a line that's also sales. Now my description in this case is then travel expenses. And there's just a fixed amount of $3,800 for travel expenses. Again, there will be VAT on it. And I can then just make sure my total is correct. $66,470, which then includes VAT. So take note, my unit price is excluding VAT. The system then adds VAT and then it gets a total. There is also an option to say the processing should be including VAT. So I could also potentially just have ticked that checkbox, but then it won't add the VAT anymore. Then the total would just be $57,800. In this case, we want the number to be $57,800 plus 15% to get $66,470. So there I've created my invoice. What we haven't uploaded yet is a logo for this company. So we quickly want to add a logo that will then be in this position just before the business's name. But this invoice is complete, and we can now email it by clicking there and then saying Send Email. Now look, maybe at this stage, the email address is used from the customer record. The contact name is read in, the amount, and you can literally just click Send for the email to go out. In this case, I'll just cancel. And then I want to go back to my invoice list. I want to go edit that invoice and I want to set a form default. You'll see the system has now allocated invoice number 1. Now the invoice series we want to use, we want it to be 25001. So I want to just fix my invoice reference number. And on my form defaults, I just want to make sure that the checkbox is on for automatic, so I don't need to change anything here. But I must make sure my reference is right for the next step of batch create. So now we want to proceed and create a second invoice. So we say new sales invoice again. The second invoice's date will be the 12th of May, so we work with May the 12th. The customer we're looking for is Digital Solutions. So again, there he is in the list. I spot him. But if I have a very long list, I can just say Digi and choose him. And here I can put a description of software and support. Again, we'll allocate to the sales account. 5 items at $5,500. And remember, we want to add a description, so I turn that column on again, and we say this is now basic software license. And then we add sales again, and we say annual support for that one. There's just one fee of $16,500, VAT included, and we create it. Now you can see that the system has automatically incremented the invoice number by 1 value, so that it's now 250002. And I can also send this invoice out to Mike Peters. So we're done with sales invoices. So we can do a batch create for sales invoices too. So let's do a batch create now. So let's go to our data, and we have some example data here that is sales invoices. All right, now I just want to quickly check here. So invoice number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so the principle remains the same. We'll start again since we've already created 2 invoices. We'll say batch update because we want to understand this invoice layout. In this case, I'll just select both records and do a batch update. Copy, and then I'll paste it here in Google Sheets again. Now, this is where we'll have another session, an advanced session, to bring in more than one line for the same invoice. So for this example, I just want to take a bit of a shortcut to make the demonstration quicker. But the idea would be in the next round that we put those 2 lines on one invoice. It's the same customer and the same fee, and these 2 lines, and then this one has 3 lines, and that one again, each has only 1 line. So in this case, I know we already have invoice numbers 250001 and 2. Okay, let's delete rows 2 to 5. I'm going to say this will be 2025003, and this will be 2025004. And then we just give them new reference numbers like so. So we want to put that column there. Then we need a date, and that will be issue date. Then we need a customer name. Now, what we're going to do here is, I just want to quickly demonstrate that. Because we have codes, we can take a shortcut and not have to use the name. So we're going to say these first 3 will go to Innovate Corp. Let's just look at our customer list again. So, Innovate Corp. Just add its code, so we can see it here. Is code number 100. Then Techstar Adventures. Techstar Adventures is 103, and Global Systems must be 104. So understand at this stage the importance of the data. If you're going to fetch the data, you usually need to create your customer record, and then afterwards, you need to create invoices to pull those customers into the system. The simplest way to maintain the relationship between the invoices or credit notes and the customer record is to do it with the code. So if you're going to extract the data, you must also extract the customer codes on the invoices so that it goes to the right customer when you import it. So this column's description just needs to be description. So in this case, we don't have a line item description in the data, or we don't have one in the heading. That's fine. So we have software and support, consulting and travel. So let's just insert my column to the left. And for the purpose of this one, we'll just put it there. So let's just check. We've put in our reference. Issue date, we have customer code. The due date is there. Then we also need a document description. We've now used the first description, but then for the line description, we must use lines.1.description. And it doesn't matter if it's the first one or the second one. It doesn't matter the order in which you put it. The system will interpret it correctly, as long as we just have our heading straight. Due date, line description, item code. In this case, we didn't put in items, we put in quantity. That will be that one. And then further, we'll also need the unit price. And we'll say the tax code to put in the VAT. And here we'll need to use a bit of the data too, because VAT 15% tax code has a specific structure. So now we'll just say our tax code here must all be 15%. And we just check what other information there is that we need. Further, when we do the advanced session, then we'll go into more detail here. But you can now see just purely from the layout here, the fields that go up to here are the document level fields. And then after that, line 1's fields come next to it, up to here. And then it starts again with the same fields but for line 2. And all those other fields are not needed now for our import. So we can just go back to our data. We want a reference number. The date is important. Which customer it is. the due date can remain default. Then we have a document description in this column. We've also put a line description here. This column won't be used. We have quantities here, the unit price, the tax code. This column won't be used. For the import, none of these columns will be used, because the system will do the calculations itself from there. So we can now just copy all our information here up to there, or even to the end. It doesn't matter now. And then we can go back to the system and say we're now busy batch creating sales invoices. So now under Sales Invoices, we've created 7 sales invoices with the information from our transaction data that we have in Google Sheets. We can now look at payments and prepayments. So let's just create 2 examples of payments for these customers. This will be the exception case to manually create payments from customers. Method 1. Receipt against an existing invoice. So in the first place, we have a payment we want to make for Innovate Corp, or money we received from Innovate Corp for 40,000 Rand. And let's say that 40,000 Rand is then a partial payment for this invoice, which is 55,200 Rand. So the easiest way to do a deposit or money received from a customer is to say go view the invoice, and just take this shortcut here and say, okay, we're going to do a receipt. The receipt we perhaps got on the 15th of May. Because I went to the invoice and said, create receipt, it fills in all the information for me. It defaults to my F&B current account, and that's the account where I received this. But it already knows it's for that customer. It says a standard message there. And it does the allocation for me to accounts receivable for this customer, and links the payment to this invoice, but it doesn't know what the amount is. So all I need to do here is to say the payment I received from the customer is only 40,000, not the full invoice amount. And then I'm done. So if I now go back to Sales Invoices, we'll see that this one still has an invoice amount of 55,200, of which 15,200 is still outstanding. And the same if I go to my customers. I can now already see I have a few customers who have no transactions yet. That's why their balances show 0 and their status shows paid. But for Innovate Corp, you can now see there are already 3 invoices issued. So if I click on the counter 3, it takes me back to this view. It shows me the 3 invoices. But if I go back to customers and I go to the accounts receivable view, then you can see there are 3 invoices that were posted in the system, and then now a deposit that was received from the customer, processed as a receipt. So my customer's balance is then necessarily reduced by that 40,000, and there's only 40,000 outstanding. Good. So if we do another manual payment as an example, which also went into the F&B account, we'll do it for Cloud Tech on the 25th of May. So Cloud Tech Industries. There's only 1 invoice. If I don't know what was paid, I'll just click on the invoices for Cloud Tech. View it, say New Receipt. Change my date to the 25th of May. And just confirm, was it received in the F&B account? Yes, it was. And then just change the amount again and say, here I received 35,000 Rand from Cloud Tech Industries. Method 2. Receipt for prepayment unallocated cash. But there might be a scenario where a client pays cash for which an invoice hasn't been issued yet, or an EFT deposit for which an invoice hasn't been issued yet. So let's look at those examples. If the customer doesn't have an invoice yet, then we go to Receipts. Now, here you'll see there are already a few transactions, and the 2 we just did are here. which are Cloud Tech Industries and Innovate Corp. But we now want to manually add more receipts. So if I say New Receipt, you'll see again it defaults to the FNB account and today's date. But let's say for argument's sake we received this payment on the 23rd of May. And we received it in the FNB account. So we'll leave it like that. But in which account will we receive it? It's a customer. So the customer's transactions are part of accounts receivable in the ledger. Which customer? Let's choose Smart Innovation. And take note, there are no invoices for Smart Innovation yet. So we just leave that amount out. The question is just how much did we get paid? Let's say we received $16,500 there. And we can create it. So there's the receipt. If I now go to Smart Innovations, Customers, Smart Innovations, you'll see there are still no invoices. But Smart Innovations accounts receivable balance is minus $16,500. So they basically made a prepayment for us, for an invoice that still needs to be issued. And then I just want to do one more example where I say we again received money on the 31st of May from a customer, but it's cash. So if we receive cash, it's not in our FNB account, it must go into petty cash. And I can perhaps just make a note here, say cash payment. Again, it will go to accounts receivable. Which customer? Let's say it's Data Tech Solutions, who paid us 2,500 Rand. And now I can create it. Back to customers. You would see Data Tech paid me 2,500 Rand, but cash, so it's in my petty cash. And so I can also go back to this level and check. Under petty cash, I now have a balance of 2,500 Rand. If I open it, it's that deposit we got, a cash deposit from Data Tech Solutions. And back to bank and cash. I'll now also see here there might now be deposits that are duplicated because I did manual transactions. So you'll now see the bank transactions we imported from the CSV are all here in suspense. In this account. This one I manually created for the 40,000 Rand. And Smart Solution, Smart Innovations, there should have been a manual one, but the Cloud Tech Industries is also a duplicate. So that's why I said in the beginning, the manual way of doing transactions is not the common way. But if you're not going to use your bank statements to do the transactions, then you can do it under the customers. Choose the invoice that was paid, view it, and do New Receipt there. But it's the exception that you'll do it if you're going to work from your bank statements, because otherwise, you'll get duplicates. So let's quickly fix those duplicates. So we now have a bunch of receipts, and we can now see this one and that one are duplicates of each other. And so is that 40,000 Rand and that 40,000. So to fix it, let's just quickly do a batch operation. So I say batch delete, and I say, that one was unnecessary, although I know it's correctly allocated against the invoice, so I can take this one out. And this one was perhaps unnecessary, and say batch delete. And there, my duplicate transactions are now out. So now I only have one 35,000 Rand and one 40,000 Rand receipt. So batch operations allow you to batch update, batch create, but also batch delete if you want to fix duplicates. Good. So we've now made payments or received payments from customers. Now we want to do refunds and credit notes. So let's do a credit note for Digital Solutions on the 20th of May. So again, I'm not even going to show it now, but I can go to Credit Notes and say New Credit Note and fill it all in, all the information. But that's the long way. So let's take the shortcut and say Sales Invoices, Digital Solutions has an invoice. And I now want to issue a credit note on it. So I go View My Invoice and say Copy to New Credit Note. It brings all the information through again. That customer linked to this one. I just need to say when my credit note is. I want to do it on the 20th of May. And I want to say that I charged for one software license too many. So my annual support shouldn't be credited. so I'll remove it. And not all 5 of the software licenses should be credited, only one of them should be credited. So I just make that quantity less, and then I'll have a 5,500 Rand credit on the account and create. So there, I've done my credit. Click Create. Now I can go look at the customer again. So it's Digital Solutions, and he still has an outstanding balance of 44,275 Rand. So if we now want to make a payment to these 2 suppliers, Office Essentials and CloudSurf Hosting, we'll then go to Banking and look at our transactions that we imported here. And we'll see Office Essentials is sitting here. We made a payment to them, so we do a new payment rule. And we say, if the description is Office Essentials, it must go to Accounts Payable because it's the supplier and Office Essentials. And then we also created a tech supply invoice. There's the 55. Tech supply, okay. So then we'll just go, and again, we don't need to use that full description. We can just shorten it a bit and say if the description is tech supply, then we must take it to Accounts Payable and choose Tech Supply and Create. So the system will allocate it like that. And the same principle will now apply here. So month-end charges will be bank costs or bank charges. So we can say this will always go to bank charges with VAT. Transfer to savings. Let's go see. Do we have an inter-account transfers account we need? So if it's transfer to savings, it will always go from the FNB account to the standard bank account. The description should be fairly constant. We can simplify it. Security services is security expenses, and we know it will have VAT on it, so we can do the VAT allocation. Cleaning services, we say cleaning. Okay, so we might not have an account for that now. We can go create one. Now let's see if we have office expenses. So we'll leave this one in suspense until we've created an account. Security services, cleaning, insurance, we should have an account for. Let's just quickly check if it's there. Insurance with VAT on it and create it. Water and rates, bank charges. I think let's take 1 or 2 more examples. Bank charges will also have VAT on it. And let's just quickly look here. Petrol card, Caltex. Let's assume this is all petrol being put in. So we can take this description then to motor vehicle expenses. And in this case, no VAT because we can't claim VAT on petrol. So one can then set up rules for all the payments. The system will then, on the next bank import, do the allocations automatically, as we see it here now. And then the user can just select all the little transactions and batch update them. So we still need to do these allocations. But let's quickly look at the receipts we have here. So that was payments to suppliers and direct expenses. We had interest received, and then 2 customers. So let's say new receipt rule. When it's digital solutions, it must go to accounts receivable and to digital solutions. And for this one, we must again go Innovate Core. Accounts receivable and Innovate Core. Then we'll select them all again and say Batch Update. So there's still 1 transaction remaining. And then we'll now look at a few of the reports. We've done a fair number of transactions now, so we can look at the profit and loss. First round, we might want to get rid of a few of these unnecessary reports that are here. Let's delete them all first and set this one up for us so we can look month by month. So we can say we're interested in May 2025, which is May. So we'll necessarily set our dates to from the 1st of May this year to the end of May. And then this we want to take the 2024 year, also from the 1st of May to the end of May, for which we won't have transactions now. But if we view it like this, then our profit and loss will look something like this. Those were our sales, here are our expenses, and we have a healthy profit of 70,000 Rand. So we can also look at the balance sheet, and again, there's a bunch of reports that are unnecessary here. Let's remove them all, except the last one, and change it to the end of May 2025. And we can also compare it with the end of May 2024 and say 2025-05 if we want to describe it as May month. And update. So if we view it now, our balance sheet looks something like this, which might not be entirely healthy. We've spent a bit too much money. We still need to get money in, but it gives us a good idea of where we stand in our business. And then, there are other reports that are relevant for all the other functionality in the system. But I think for the moment, I'll stop here.